and welcome back to Baking with Confidence. My name is Natalie and this is Fitz, and welcome to episode 3. This week we are making poppy seed almond cake, and I am working my way through Claire Saffitz' dessert book, Dessert Person. And I'm super excited for this week. Poppy seed is an underrated flavor and spice, and I don't use it nearly enough in my baking. I have all my mise en place done behind me, my oven preheating, and I'm ready to go. Let's dive into this recipe today. Excuse me, I need to look at this. So Claire leaves a very kind message at the top of it, talking about a childhood moment and just her enjoyment for poppy seeds. And the first step we have to do here is have our oven going at 350, which I have already done, and we have to prepare our pan. So let's get going, baking with confidence. I have my bundt pan here, and she says in her recipe that you don't have to use a bundt pan. You can use any ordinary cake pan or loaf pan if you don't have this. This is my only bundt pan that I have. I generally like the classic style of it, and she says that you need to generously oil it and then powder it with flour. I have my neutral oil behind me. Some people prefer to pour it on a piece of napkin, or whatever you want. That's pippin'. I'm going to pour mine directly into the pan, and then I have a little handy dandy brush that I'm going to spread the oil out around the pan for me. Once I have a nice generous coat of oil all over my pan, I'm going to then take my flour and dust it to make it non-stick. You might think, is this really necessary? Trust me, once you've had one bundt stick, you will always do this. I'm gonna take my brush in here and get really into those nooks and crannies. Whoop. Fitz, I'm spilling. And if you feel like it's too much oil, trust me, it's not. Really lather up the pan until everything's covered, and then you can go back in with a paper towel if you really want to gather up any oil that you've seen pool in your design of your bundt pan, but really just take it up all the way to the edge. And Claire talks about this in her little tips that she has at the bottom of her recipe page, talking about oiling and flouring the pan. I believe I'm ready. I think I'm going to just do one more little. I'm so paranoid about having my bundt stick, so I'm just gonna really do this up nicely, and I'm going to set my flour in. So into the sink. And flour time. So I just have my flour here. I'm just gonna kind of sprinkle it around. You can do this any way you want, but I'm just kind of fly by the seat of my pants kind of person. He is not happy that he's not in here with me at the moment, so please excuse my dog as I flour this. Once it's nice and floured, we'll set it aside while we mix our wet and dry ingredients. From briefly looking over the recipe, it's actually much simpler than any of the other recipes I've done thus far. You mix all of the dry, including the sugar, into the pan, and then afterwards, you go straight into adding your wet mixture. It's not a two-part divided, adding one at a time, none of that stuff. You just do one and done. Buns tend to be the simplest bakes to make, so we shall see. At the top of her recipe, she lists all of these lovely helpful tips, like this is an all-season recipe. It's about 30 minutes of active time, so like what I'm doing right now, and then it'll take about 2 hours to 2 hours and 15 minutes for baking, and then it says the difficulty is level 1, very easy. And I agree, buns are probably the easiest and timeless cakes that you can make. So I'll come back with you in a second and we'll start mixing our ingredients. All right, with my pan all nicely ready to go and floured behind me, I'm going to start combining my dry ingredients. In this bowl, I have my sugar and flour, and in this one, I have my poppy seeds, salt, and baking soda. So we're going to put powder. So we're gonna put all this into my mixing bowl with the paddle setting, and then I'm going to just stir to combine before I start adding in my wet ingredients. I have the oil, milk, and eggs, and my 2 extracts, almond and vanilla. You can exchange it for double almond or double vanilla depending on your flavor profile that you prefer. I am going to stick as closely to the recipe as possible, but just wait. Me being me, I must deviate. I will be deviating a little bit for the glaze, and I'll let you know what her version is and what the version I'm going to be doing. So let's get mixing, adding our dry and then our wet so we can pop this into the oven. already and in the pan. It is a relatively thick mixture, very much what you would expect from a bundt recipe, and it is ready for the oven. Our oven is preheated. I'm gonna double check one more time before I pop this in to make sure that I am good to go. Let's see, 80 to 90 minutes. 15 minutes to cool in the pan before you flip it out. And this isn't the end, guys. We have one more step before we are completely done with this episode of Baking with Confidence. There is a glaze to go on top, and that was what I was talking about earlier when I said I'm gonna be mixing things up a little bit. So let me get this in the oven and then we can start working on our glaze. Here we go. Whew. Hey Google, set a timer for 80 minutes. Guys, the cake is still in the oven and has about 15 more minutes, and then it needs a little bit of time to cool, but I'm going to start working on the glaze. And this is where I mentioned I would be changing it up a bit. From looking at Claire's recipe, it's pretty straightforward: butter, vanilla, almond, orange juice, and powdered sugar. Mix it all together and you have your glaze, and you'll be spreading it on using a brush while it is still warm. But I don't know, just me being a classic person, I really love the traditional flavor of lemon with poppy seeds. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be splitting the liquid between lemon and orange, trying to keep true to the original flavor palette that Claire designed, but adding my own spin to it. So feel free to do what you want to do. If lemon is your cup of tea, go for that. If you want to stick to the recipe, try something new, go for the orange. I'm doing a little bit of both. I have one of my lemons and I'm just going to prep it so I can get some good juice from it. I have my orange juice, no pulp. I'm going to omit the almond extract from this and just do vanilla. I'm not a big almond fan, so I really want to enjoy this recipe and take it in as what it is, but still kind of keep true to what Claire wants. But I'm going to do just almond, and she recommends this. She said if there's something you don't like, change it to me what you want, and if you do like it, just keep it as it is. So I need to melt my butter, measure out my powdered sugar, and start juicing my lemon. So here we go, making the glaze. All right, so I did my prep. I have my powdered sugar ready to go. I need to zest my lemon and measure out the rest of my ingredients. I've already melted my butter as well, so I'm going to pour that in first. Now, the recipe calls for 1/4 cup of orange juice. So that breaks down to 2 tablespoons of lemon and 2 tablespoons of orange. So I'm just gonna juice this real quick. I'm gonna have more lemon juice than I need, but I don't like to waste, so I'll probably pop it in my fridge for another recipe or drink later. So, ooh, maybe just enough. We'll see. Get one more. There we go. Alrighty. Set that aside. Ooh, one. I'm gonna have to do the other half. I'm slightly shocked by this. Here we go again. Now, if you don't have one of these, you can just use your hand and squeeze. I'd highly recommend rolling it on top of a hard surface to get the juices kind of flowing and to catch the seeds in your hand as you juice it. Definitely squeeze it multiple times, really grind it in there, and try to get the juice out if you are doing it by hand. If you have a helpful strainer and juicer like I do, then use that. So let's get the other tablespoon. And now orange juice. If you only have pulp on hand, go for that. I went for the no pulp option just to make sure that the glaze was as thin and seamless as possible, but if you're not afraid of the pulp, go for it. And the last thing to add, like I said, I'm doubling up on the vanilla instead of the almond and vanilla. So this means 1 tablespoon of this goes into the glaze. I think that might be it for my vanilla. In it goes, and then mix. So once this is all ready to go, I'm gonna have a nice, clean, thin glaze. I will set it aside. I have to let my cake finish and cool before I pour it on. So we will resume this when the cake is ready. See you in a few. Here we are, guys. At the very end, the cake has begun to cool. It spends about 15 minutes inside the pan before you flip it over. Now, I'm not gonna lie, I began to stress while I was trying to get this bad boy out of my beautiful tin. Maybe I didn't grease it enough, maybe I didn't put enough flour in it, but I will tell you, it definitely makes you panic. I did use an offset spatula like Claire recommended in the cookbook, but she also recommends that you can use various other tools such as like a knife or some other type of flat edge object to get around the sides of the bundt pan. Now that I've had it out and it has had a chance to cool, I used a toothpick. I always keep mine pretty close on hand near the stove so I can test all of my baked goods and, like Claire said, poke a bunch of holes in it so it'll take the glaze. I finished up the glaze before this was done. I'm just gonna mix it up one more time just to make sure everything is combined together before putting it on the bundt. She says to put a plate or some sort of device below the bundt pan to trap any of the glaze that pours through, because she says to then put it back on top. I do not have any fancy technology. I just have this paintbrush. Yes, it is a paintbrush. No, it is not a basting brush. I am an artist and this is all I could find. Instead of a silicone brush, I'm using that, so you know, it's gonna work. So here we go. We're gonna put this on and then it'll be done. All in all, throughout the entire experience baking this dessert, it was really easy. And I always find that buntts are some of the easiest desserts to make, and they are always a crowd pleaser. It smells amazing. It does have a really high rise, so I think next time I might actually put less in the pan and then have a separate smaller bundt or maybe little muffins or something like that. I would be interested in trying a just orange glaze, but like I said, I'm a sucker for lemon, so I went with half lemon, half orange. I'm really not sure what kind of difference that's gonna make, but I will let you know in my blog post, so go check out my blog after you watch the video. But here it is. I'm gonna let it chill overnight and come up to room temp before cutting into it, because I would like the cake to cool and all the structure to be solidified before slicing it in. And I think this is gonna make an excellent breakfast treat with my cup of coffee in the morning. Fitz is here to say goodbye, and I will have to say that I am one step closer to baking with confidence. Thank you, Claire, and I will be a dessert person before we know it.